Okay, I think we can start now, James. I would like to welcome you all. We are very happy that we have so many participants. It shows that a lot of people have are interested in the new Google Glass Enterprise Edition. I would like to welcome James Lee. He's from Google, and he's going to tell you all about Google Glass, and the potential for you and your customers is very big. So this is a very interesting new product for you all. James will show a presentation, and he will tell you all about the product, about how you can become a registered partner for Google. So I'd like to give the word to James now.
Thank you, Isabel. Hello, everyone. Great to meet you. Hi, I'm James Lee. I apologize, for some reason my video is not working, so you'll just have to rely on my voice. But I'm with Google, and I'm responsible for our go-to-market distribution efforts in Europe, and have been working very closely with Tech Data to bring Glass to the EU market. So I will be going through a presentation that essentially covers an overview of Glass, but I think more importantly, focuses on the use cases for Glass, how your customers can get value out of using solutions that run on Glass. And we'll talk specifically around what those use cases are and where we see the most fit with Glass in the enterprise space. So with that, let me share my screen. Let's see here. Oops. Okay, let's see. Some challenges here. Apologies. There we go. Share. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see this.
I can see it.
Great, and I'll move into presentation mode, and away we go. Let's see. Small. All right, great. So as you can see, this deck will really be focused on the retailer's role or the reseller's role in Glass. Glass is not sold directly by Google, and so we rely heavily on our channel to get the word out there. And so we'll go through sort of the steps that I think will enable you guys to get set up. All right, so this, by the way, we will share with you the deck if you guys are interested, and the intent here is to really provide you with the hands-on information needed to get started. So we'll start at a high level, but we will get into some details here just to make sure that you guys can get all of your questions answered. So Glass, as many of you may know, has been around for almost 8 years, kind of starting in roughly the 2013 timeframe. For Enterprise Edition, that device is newer. However, Glass itself has been around for about 8 years, focused on the consumer market. About 5 years ago, we realized that there was so much demand from the enterprise space that we wanted to pivot the entire business toward that space, seeing that there was real substantial quantifiable value that our customers were seeing in terms of improved productivity, reduced errors, faster training times, and so forth. And so we'll get into all of those metrics. You can also find case studies and many of these statistics about the value that Glass brings on the Glass landing page, which is at google.com/glass. And you'll also find more information about providers there. And I'll be referencing that as we go through. But as you can see, they are really kind of meant to provide workers that work primarily with their hands, which I define as workers that need to use both hands to do their jobs, with a glanceable display that's really meant for all-day comfort, right? These devices, even with the safety frames shown here, are less than 100 grams, and so really are meant to be able to be worn for a full work shift. Oops. So what is this device called Google Glass? So essentially, I'll skip ahead to the good stuff. Essentially, it's a wearable computer. It has a full-fledged quad-core Qualcomm chip in it that is fully capable of running standalone applications with either Wi-Fi connectivity or Bluetooth connectivity providing the data feed. In addition, it's self-contained as far as having a battery that can power the device for multiple hours, and how long the battery lasts, of course, depends on what you are using it for. In addition, it has audio capabilities, a speaker built in, so that you can either receive audio signals from a video stream or from voice instructions. You can also use a Bluetooth accessory headset if you want to actually enhance the audio as well. In addition, there's a USB-C fast charging receptacle at the back. Some of our customers leave it permanently connected to a battery pack, so you can get literally, unlimited power to the device. There is a touchpad on the side, as you can kind of see on the right side of the temple here. There's also multiple microphones built into the device that beamform around where the wearer's mouth is. Obviously, you can see there's a camera as well that can take HD images, both video and photos, that can either be stored on the device or streamed. And then lastly, the display Prism, which is really a heads-up display. You can kind of see here the clear cube over the right eye is located just above the user's field of view so that it doesn't interfere or get in between the user's vision, field of vision, and what they're focused on. So it's really meant to provide a heads-up display that provides the right information at the right time. And we'll get into what that information is very shortly. Usually I don't spend a lot of time on the technical specifications. Again, we will leave this deck behind so that you can share this with your customers as needed. But I think this really kind of covers the basics of, kind of having a standalone device with its own quad-core chip, as well as power and everything else you need to run on a standalone basis. So let's scratch the surface a bit more beyond the specs, which a lot of times we kind of look at the specs and sort of compare it with a mobile device. This is obviously a mobile device, but it is not the same as a phone. There are a couple of key differentiators here. One is certainly the display is very different. It's not a touch display as in a mobile device. It's really, as I mentioned, more of a heads-up display that really shows the information when they need it and letting workers kind of focus on their task at hand without having the display get in the way. Secondly, one way to look at this device as far as, does this make sense for your customers? Does this make sense for a user? Is if that user is what we call a hands-free worker, if they need to use both their hands, if they're assembling a jet engine, if they're providing maintenance on a wind turbine, if they're working on network equipment, all these sorts of things that require both hands as well as complex instructions really is where glass excels. And we're seeing increasingly AI and machine learning help in this way with computer vision, with assisted technology such as voice bots, really kind of enabling that worker to work on their own with the assistance of AI, guiding them through the task at hand. And the contrast here is how these workers are doing it today, which is primarily some are using a paper on a clipboard, others are using tablets or laptops. All of those distract from the hands-on work that's required, right? Where they have to use one of their hands to hold the devices. So this is what glass is replacing. Lastly, two-way communication is perhaps one of the sort of what we call the killer apps for glass. We have, for instance, Google Meet on glass. We also have Zoom on glass. And so this is a very quick turnkey way for wearers to communicate and remotely collaborate with expert subject matter experts who may be across the factory floor or across the country. And so enabling the wearer to instantaneously show what they're working on and transmit that to an expert on their laptop hundreds of miles away is very powerful in terms of being able to let that subject matter expert guide them through the specific steps. You can imagine, for instance, if there's a commercial jet that's down in a remote area, a remote airport, where there are no specialists for this particular jet. Well, being able to have the wearer instantly pipe in an expert who can help them diagnose the problem has immediate benefits, as you can imagine. And there's multitude other examples where that remote collaboration for doctors, for field technicians, in the manufacturing space, in the logistics space, can provide that instantaneous expertise that can solve a problem quicker than most other techniques. So The display, line of sight that doesn't get in the way, enabling hands-free workers, and enabling two-way communications really are the key features of glass. So just a quick view, if you haven't seen glass before, if you haven't worn glass before, just a quick overview of how it works. This is by no means a detailed training manual, but just to give you a preview. So it does primarily work based on touch gestures. So as I mentioned, the side of the glass, the right temple, does enable touch gestures, both swiping forward and backwards, up and down, but even multi-finger gestures are able to be used on glass. And from that sense, from the screen, you can actually navigate. You see the application screen through what we call pages or cards. And that allows you to either view different settings or view different demos, or just go to the home screen. And so that's the construct by which, the visual construct by which glass is used by glass to navigate through the different applications. So with that, with an overview of the device and the capabilities and the sort of technical components that are contained within, let's get into what all of that adds up to from a perspective of potential use cases. So this is by no means a comprehensive spectrum of the use cases that wearers of glass have used, but by far these are the majority of the use cases that our customers have used glass for. And I'll cover some of the ones that aren't covered here, but just to kind of get into the main ones. So an easy way to think about this is glass can be used anywhere something needs to be moved, something needs to be made, something needs to be inspected or repaired. So as the visuals indicate, in the case of moving things, that can be thought of as intralogistics, right? Between in a warehouse, whether you have very small eaches that you're packing into boxes for shipping from an e-commerce standpoint, or if it's pallet-sized parts as shown here, where it may be just-in-time inventory from the warehouse to the manufacturing floor. Any of those sorts of logistical movements really can be optimized by glass. Again, because in the case of small packages, on shelves that are being packaged for shipment, you can provide that precise package location and navigation through glass. Glass, we have solution partners specifically in the logistics space that integrate into warehouse management systems that then feed that data into the glass display, showing them down to the bin number, the shelf number, the row number, all of that within a warehouse. And it can be within glass, this logistics solution can be created as a task list, essentially a work list where workers that are in a warehouse can receive those instructions, and you can optimize the routes they take within the warehouse so that they're optimally, picking all of the items without wasted movement. Okay, so that's move. Within the make or sort of the manufacturing space, the way to think about how glass can provide value there is any sort of manufacturing process where there are very complex instructions. In the case of an engine block, there may be hundreds of steps that a worker needs to perform consistently and accurately over and over to make sure that they are putting out a high quality product. Glass can ensure that by not only providing the detailed work instructions that may be being directly pulled from a manufacturing execution system, but it can also ensure that the worker is getting the right types of guidance, such as not only schematic diagrams, but even videos of how to do things if they're a newer employee. So the manufacturing process, anytime there's a high level of complexity or a high level of variability, glass can ensure that those instructions are carried through consistently. And from an inspection and repair perspective, those are sort of two sides of the same coin, in that typically with inspection, as you can see in the photo here, inspectors, whether it's quality assurance folks, maintenance workers, others, field technicians, typically go through a long checklist to verify that all the conditions are nominal and and there aren't any sort of variations, right? And so a lot of times with a clipboard, a person may just check off on items without really having a way to audit their results or to understand that they've actually done the work. But with Glass, if you get rid of that clipboard, you can now actually require the worker to take a video of their work or take a snapshot at each step or at each kind of important step, so that you can then upload that information to a particular maintenance record and see how that inspection was carried out and what the conditions were. And then with regard to repairing, same sort of thing. You may be following, the wearer may be following a complex set of instructions. However, if they encounter an issue that they can't solve, then this is where the two-way communication comes in, where they can call out to a remote expert and say, hey, I can't figure this out, or the procedures aren't helping me to diagnose this or to repair it. And that is where having that one-on-one remote collaboration can really make a significant difference to that repair, to getting it done. So move, make, inspect, and repair are a great way to think about how Glass can add value to your customers. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what that means. And I think I've covered most of it, but just to reinforce what I've already talked about. So along those use cases of move, make, inspect, and repair, the specific features and functions that Glass enables, and I've talked about most of these, are things like task completion and verification. Again, if you're going through a complex instruction list and you want to ensure that that worker is doing it correctly, not only can you show them all of those instructions in a way that doesn't distract them, but from a data standpoint, you can record, you can kind of track sort of how collectively, different workers in different regions are doing, if there are particular areas that are slowing them down so that you can optimize them, or if things are going well, what is it that you can do to improve things? So you can really do analytics as a result of using Glass for these complex tasks and verification. Secondly, I've talked about, but the remote video collaboration, again, being able to use something like a Google Meet or a Zoom to do remote video collaboration, where it's what we call see what I see. As the wearer, I'm seeing a particular area of focus, and I want to share that with you. So we call it see what I see. Third, I haven't talked about this too much, but I think the real-time training is a significant component that drives a lot of value for our customers. We have documented cases of customers on record saying that they are reducing their training times for new employees in a particular job, whether it be manufacturing or something else, logistics, for example, that they are reducing those training times by 40 to 60%. And the main value is not only are they training the customers more quickly, and they're using Glass to do the training, but when they actually use Glass to do their actual jobs, they're also more efficient and more productive. So they go hand in hand as far as training workers faster and enabling them to be more productive at the same time. And then lastly, notifications are something I haven't talked about much, but you can imagine if you're in a shop floor, if you're in a maintenance organization, if you're in a place where maybe it's hard to reach you, being able to provide real-time notifications, whether you're on a shop floor or out in the field, is significant. Many times those notifications go unanswered when the cell phone is in the person's pocket or their laptop is not open. They may miss them. But if you're wearing Glass and a red light flashes on the screen with an urgent issue, they are much more likely to see that versus having received it through another way. And as far as the industries that we have done a lot of work in, this is by no means comprehensive, but I would say the top 5 verticals that we've really seen a lot of traction and have customers in are in retail, in particular mass merchandisers, large retailers, where they are using Glass, at least lately in times of COVID, for enabling the buy online, pickup in store capability or curbside pickup, depending on what your stores may call it. But essentially, retailers are turning their store locations into mini warehouses where they're doing micro fulfillment for these single consumer basket fulfillment sort of transactions. So we have retail workers that are now piloting Glass to use in store for picking these baskets of customers who have bought stuff online and then preparing them for curbside pickup. They're also used in sort of back of store operations and distribution centers by several retailers. So you can kind of imagine it, it's really along the sort of move use case that I talked about around using glass for logistics. And then in manufacturing, or in the make kind of area, we have customers such as Boeing and AGCO. Boeing, using it to install cable wire harnesses in their commercial airliners and military airplanes. And AGCO, producing agricultural tractors, are using glass in the manufacturing process as well as in the QA process. In healthcare, which I haven't talked about too much, but we have a couple of use cases in which doctors are using glass in the area of telemedicine. So if there are remote healthcare facilities where a specialist may be located far away from that facility, a nurse or some other healthcare provider can wear glass, looking at the patient at a particular area to help that specialist doctor who may be remotely located to help diagnose and treat that patient. We also see it being used for training in things like surgeries and other areas where medical students can see what the doctor is seeing and thereby learn how to diagnose and interact with patients better. And then fourthly, in field service. So field technicians, Mark Vend services very complex vending machines. NSF is a global institution that helps with food safety audits and food safety training. And so they're using glass to train workers in new quick service restaurants, fast food stores, and things like that. And then lastly, logistics, which I've talked about, is perhaps one of our most mature areas, where we have companies like DHL and Samsung and others, Neovia, Figa in Germany, who are using glass, again, for that picking and packing logistics operation. So a term that many of our customers call vision picking, because they're using glass to provide visual guides to help their workers pick their items more efficiently. So that's kind of the sort of sample use cases and also some of the target industries that we are in. So moving on from here, let's get into how now the role of the reseller plays in here. So if you can kind of think about 4 approaches here that we typically have seen our customers provide, our resellers provide. So again, we'll provide this slide deck later so you can kind of take a look at it. But the first is simple. It's simply resell the hardware without solutions. So you're simply selling the device in the box. And your role is simply to drive that awareness to your customers about glass, manage their orders when they place an order, and then make sure that they receive it and are satisfied with it. Secondly, we have more out-of-the-box or turnkey solutions that really a user can use pretty quickly without too much setup. So some examples here are Google Meet, which is currently in a beta format to be released later this year. We have Zoom on Glass, which is generally available through one of our partners called Medix. And so in this case, there may be some role in which perhaps you're helping to configure the device, perhaps you're preloading it with one of these apps, perhaps helping with deploying it on the customer's Wi-Fi infrastructure with a small amount of deployment training and support. So that's option number 2. Option number 3 is really where you as a reseller may be more of an ISV, an independent software vendor, where you have an existing solution. Perhaps it runs on Android, and you feel that you can re-platform it and that it would work optimally on Glass, because Glass also runs on Android. So it may be where you are either providing that application and then bundling it with your hardware. And so an example of this is Upskill provides the assisted order picking capability. We have Picavi, who provides warehouse logistics. We have our company I Succeed that provides restaurant training. So these are very vertically specific applications that typically integrate into a backend system, such as manufacturing or maintenance or logistics. And those third-party solutions, many of them are listed on our google.com/glass landing page. There's a provider page that lists many of them, where some of them may bundle software with hardware. Others may just sell the hardware and expect their customers to buy hardware from perhaps a reseller that only sells hardware, right? Such as in option number 1. And then lastly, we have many customers who see the value in glass as a wearable computer and are in the process of building a completely custom solution that is based on glass. These may be larger enterprises that are building specific applications for their unique needs. That may be things like work instructions or job training or notifications. And they have an in-house Android team that is able to build this application. So there are a multitude of ways that you can approach this. And one thing to know is that glass really is focused 100% on the enterprise space. So when we sell glass, we, as the manufacturer, we aren't providing it loaded up with a lot of applications. We are relying very much on our reseller community to provide those third-party solutions. There are some exceptions, such as Google Meet, for instance, which is, of course, a Google application. But for the most part, those vertical specific applications will continue to be provided by our strategic list of partners that, again, you can see on our landing page. Okay, so next, to kind of actually talk about how that reseller can get signed up. So there's a couple of things. First off, you go to Tech Data. I mean, first and foremost, Tech Data can provide you all the details of getting started with glass and working through the Google reseller terms and conditions that will allow you to purchase devices from Tech Data. There are a couple of Google specific documents, if you have not worked with Google before, that are required. One is an NDA, which is simple enough. It's fully online that you simply click to accept. The second is a Google brand license agreement, which gives you the license to use Google logo and the glass logo according to our brand sort of license agreements. It allows you to create web pages with our logos and things like that. So those are 3 separate documents. The first and second one are specific to directly with Google, and the third is with Tech Data. So from a contractual standpoint, that's what's required. And then number 2, Tech Data can kind of fill in the details around how you can order devices through them. And then lastly, from a support standpoint, we have a lot of self-service resources to help end customers and resellers get started, whether it's developing or just training on glass or how to get started. And we can always dig into that in a lot more detail as needed. So development and deployment. So this speaks to resellers that, again, are interested in leveraging maybe their existing solution and planning to put it on glass, or in general, how you would deploy glass across an organization. So this is, again, just really a high-level overview, but we're happy to provide detail as your customers require. So, first and foremost is, we do provide a developer page. So for our resellers who are looking to get started, we have things such as OS and firmware updates with release notes. We have developer guides on how to actually build to things like the glass, the glass display, which is slightly much sort of different from the actual display that you might expect in a mobile app. And in general, how you build apps for glass. And so this is really kind of the best place to get started. And the link here is one way to get to it. But again, you can also go to google.com/glass and click on the developer tab. So just a quick view, here we go, just to reinforce that. There's a developer tab on the landing page. And it'll talk about things like how you use the device, how you deploy the device, how to develop on the device, and then just general open questions. I won't go into too much detail here. However, we have the standard sort of set of Android Studio APKs to develop on. But I think the main thing here are some of the code samples that we provide so that developers know how to build on the sort of basic card structure using the ID and UI that is provided here. And also how to use things like the voice recognition. You can use voice commands to do things like move to next steps, switch between applications, that sort of thing. And of course, QR codes are a very easy way to configure the device, given that the device doesn't have a keyboard. And the last alternative is you can connect the device to a laptop and use an application like Visor, which allows you to view the glass display on your laptop. And installing apps, again, we have an Android Flash tool that, again, is fairly straightforward to use, where you connect a glass to a laptop, which allows you to install your developed application on the device. We have a support page as well. So again, you can link to it from the homepage, and we'll provide this deck here for this specific link. But you can either see sort of a list of frequently asked questions, or actually contact us for additional support. All right, now from a developer standpoint, I think we covered the basics. I know there's a lot more details there, and we're happy to dig into that if you guys have additional questions. But moving on to sales and marketing, which is something that I know a little bit more about. So I'm happy to kind of talk about some more details around how we can support your efforts. So as I mentioned, we have our partner marketing toolkit that really kind of covers the brand guidelines around how best to position glass, how to sort of display it, how to actually kind of talk about glass from a perspective of how we're positioning it. We really ask that, that consistency is really key, so that customers are aware of how glass is being positioned. So there is a process there. If you guys want to do things such as press releases or joint marketing, that sort of thing, we request that our partners adhere to the marketing toolkit. We also do have a couple of resources for customers. The landing page, which I've talked about. Number two, though, we have, one of our distributors here in the US, Synex, has created a pretty good resource around glass. And many of our partners have created a multitude of videos and solutions for glass that really sort of feature the hardware. There's a lot more resources here that we can provide. This is just a starting point. But to get you guys kind of up to speed, this is a good way to start with these three resources. Now, the glass provider page I mentioned under sales and marketing, because we would love to add more resellers, more partners, more providers to this list. And so, the conditions for being added to this list are primarily, of course, you must sign up to become a glass reseller with Tech Data. In addition, we require that you have some presence of your own on your website where you talk about what you're building for glass. So customers, because there will be a link here from this provider page to the page that you create that talks about your own specific solution or service that you're providing around glass. So we require that. And then if everything that you build, including this entry as well as your web page, if it conforms to our brand page and our brand guidelines, then we would be happy to add you to this provider page. Okay, so I think that covers the bulk of my presentation. I have some frequently asked questions here, but what I'd rather do is really sort of open it up to the floor, to any questions that you might have, and really kind of start the discussion there. I think we have about 20 minutes left. So I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
I already see some questions through the chat. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will take care of them. Two people have asked the same question. Can glass be used when the user is already wearing glasses?
Yeah, there's a couple of different options there. That's a great question. So as you saw in, let me see here. Interestingly, I guess I didn't show any images with just the titanium band, did I? Okay. So the default state for glass is with this titanium band. So this is a two-piece, two SKU order. So when you buy the glass pod, I think actually, let me go back to it. It comes with this pod with a charging cable. And that pod then, or the device, can be then connected to a couple of different frames. One is this safety frame for those that are in manufacturing situations or other situations where a safety frame is required. And this can be outfitted with a prescription lens, right? So you can wear that with safety lens and also have it kind of customized with a prescription lens. Now, oftentimes that's not practical and not cost effective. And so glass with this titanium band can be worn over some eyeglasses, some existing eyeglasses, but not all eyeglasses. And it's quite honestly not the ideal solution for eyeglasses. So we are also working with some third-party partners that are building essentially a bracket that holds this pod, which is about 50 grams, to the side of your regular eyeglasses. So you can essentially connect it to that regular eyeglass and keep those frames without having to, purchase a new frame as shown here. So we're working on that very closely right now with a partner to enable that. So stay tuned for more details there. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, the second question I see is Microsoft Teams ecosystem integration planned?
Yeah. So it is, believe it or not, it is actually something that we're looking into. So we are in talks with them to add that to our list of remote collaboration, two-way communication applications, because we recognize that they're a leading provider of this, of course. So I have nothing to announce now, but it is something that we are working on. So stay tuned.
Okay. The next question is, where can we find media when this is actually being used in cases?
Yeah, I'm guessing that means.
I think he means used cases videos. You have a lot of them on the Google Glass website.
Yeah, on the landing page, there is an opening video that kind of covers some of our customer use cases. There actually are quite a few, and it's a good point. I think one thing that I think that reminds me to do is perhaps add a slide to this presentation that has links to our glass partners. We have a lot of videos out there. In fact, if you go to YouTube and just search, type in Google Glass, Google Glass Enterprise specifically, I think will probably get you better results. But several of our partners have created YouTube channels with it. Yeah, that's a great point. So I think it's something that we should consolidate together, and stay tuned there as well, Sylvester. I will consolidate a list of video links and I'll share that with Isabel to share with you guys.
Okay, but on the Google Glass Enterprise website, you can already see some videos from used cases right now.
Yeah, great.
Okay, the next question is, what is the price for Google Glass? Can you share with us maybe the suggested end user price?
Yeah, maybe that's a better question for you, Isabel. But I mean, I think, we don't really have yeah, I mean, there isn't really like an announced MSRP. I can give you a ballpark though, right? So the device is roughly, I think the sort of stated MSRP, which again hasn't really been announced, but I think it's around 930 euros for the pod. And then the frame, I think the titanium band, I believe, is about 130 euros. And the frame, the safety frame that I showed on the presentation is approximately 200 euros, but I may not have that exactly right, but that's roughly the range.
Okay. Once the contracts, if you are interested in becoming a Google reseller, once the contracts are signed, we will share the purchase price from Tech Data to you, of course.
Yeah, and I think I can say that as if you are a new reseller, there is a promotion that significantly discounts your first purchase of glass, off of that MSRP.
Are there already some standard apps for glass?
Yes, there are. The definition of standard might vary amongst some people, but if by standard you mean sort of just ready to go out of the box, then yes, there are. So as I mentioned, the Zoom app for glass is pretty standard. It's right out of the box, and you just install it and it's good to go. Same thing goes for Google Meet. However, it is in beta right now, since we just released it a couple of months ago. The multitude of partners that we have out there, whether it's Upskill, as I mentioned, or iSucceed, Ubamax, Picavi, they have applications that have been on glass for many years now, over 5 years in some cases. And so they are as standard as they get. However, there is a fair amount of configuration that's required for those apps, because they are really more like solutions that encompass backend systems, enterprise, ERP type systems for integration. But yeah, there are a lot of standard apps for glass. One thing I will mention though is there isn't an app store for glass. We haven't put the Google apps that I've talked about onto the Google Play Store, for instance. Because again, that's very much a consumer construct. And for us, we view glass as a purpose-built tool that is typically configured before the user even touches it. So that the idea is when a user puts it on, it's all set up and just ready to go. So that's another consideration to think about.
Okay, the next question is, glass is connecting via BLE to Android or iOS smartphone for data transmission.
Yeah.
Is there a special app available in the stores?
Yeah, no, there isn't. There is, so glass can connect, yes, to BLE to a smartphone. However, the main mode of connection is primarily through Wi-Fi, because as I mentioned early on, the device is completely self-standing. It has its own quad-core Qualcomm chip, so you can do all of the compute on glass. And so in the case of indoor use cases like factories and warehouses, typically glass is just connected to that building's Wi-Fi. And then if it's in the case of an outdoor use, like a field technician on a wind turbine, for example, then it's tethered to a phone, typically, either via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi for data connectivity, because glass does not have a SIM card in it. And so it relies on either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth for data transmission.
Okay. The next question is, for use in healthcare, how can the device be cleaned and kept sterile?
Yeah, great question. So in any kind of industry where that's required, not just healthcare, there is a procedure for that. It involves alcohol wipes. You can use those sorts of moist wipes to do it. And mostly it's of course there's sweat in many environments where you need to wipe that off. So yeah, so it's fairly simple. It's simply using kind of alcohol wipes.
Okay. Is there a way to have the device for demo physically? Do you have demo units available?
We have a small amount. It's typically meant for customers who are basically on the verge of piloting, that have kind of very clearly defined use cases. What I think the objective of today's call is honestly to get everyone on here very excited about glass as resellers. And if there's folks that already have solutions, or they have customers that they think are very much interested in glass, I think one of the best ways is really to get signed up as a reseller to start right off. As I mentioned, we have for new resellers significantly discounted cost. Even if you just buy 2 devices, there's a significant discount available. And I think the best way for you to demo it physically is to be familiar with the device. And so by investing in a couple of devices, that will get support from Google as far as helping you to get your application working on glass. Or if you want to just sell it with something like, Zoom or Google Meet on it, we can help you there too. But I think what we're really looking for is resellers who are willing to just start with a modest investment of a couple of devices and sign up as a reseller. And then that will open really the floodgates of Google support to help you then present this to your customer.
Okay, thank you, James. The next question is, any plans on supporting the Microsoft Dynamics ERP ecosystem?
Yeah, so this is really contingent on our partners, our ISV partners to do. And in fact, I know of some of our partners who have done that as far as integrating it into Microsoft Dynamics for CRM, as far as being able to, for field technicians to log cases with, using Glass to take things like photos and videos and then have that logged into Microsoft Dynamics. However, it's not really Google that would do that. It's our partners based on their solutions that would then build that integration. So it has been done before, but it's not being done by Google, but by our partners.
Then the next question is there a minimum sales volume or other minimum requirements to be able to sell this via Tech Data and sign a contract?
Yeah, great question. There is no minimum quantity to sign up as a reseller. You can sign the GRT, the Google reseller terms, and I guess not buy anything right off the bat. However, if you want to get started, I don't see why you wouldn't purchase devices if you were interested in getting started, at least a couple of devices. But if you wanted to get started with the sort of new reseller discount, you have to buy at least 2 devices to qualify for the discount. So it's not a lot. We wanted to make it low on purpose just to help you guys get started.
Okay, after the webinar, we will send out a thank you mail and we can give you more information later on the discounts that we can offer.
Yeah.
Let me see, do we have more questions? Where can we find info about the contract and how to sign up? This is also a good question. Tech Data created a website, especially for the resellers. The address is glass.techdatavendors.be. I think the link was also mentioned in the invitations to this webinar. So if you go to the website, there you can register as a partner. You can see on the top of the page, become a partner. You just click on the link and you fill in the first step that James explained. First, you have to fill in some forms for Google. And once that is done, we are informed, and then we will send you the Tech Data contract you have to sign. So if you want to become a partner, just go to the website and there you can fill in the document from Google, and then the procedure can start. So this is the easiest way.
Yep.
Okay, the next question is, what about security? You are using Zoom, why not Cisco WebEx or Microsoft Teams? Are they not more secure for us in the West?
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure, what the comparisons are from a security standpoint. However, we are actually in talks with both Microsoft Teams as well as Cisco WebEx around enabling their app to run on Glass. We actually have sort of an alpha build of the Cisco WebEx solution. So they've already started on development. Teams we're still talking about from a perspective of, how it would work and that sort of thing. So stay tuned, I guess, is the best I can say, but we are in talks with them because we recognize that a lot of enterprises use both of those services.
The next question is it easy to use Glass with web pages such as ticketing system?
Yeah, great question. So, Chrome, for instance, as a browser does work on Glass. It's not installed on Glass, but it would work. You can also create Glass applications that are essentially frames for a browser page. But one thing to note, so the answer is yes. However, there is some consideration for the way in which glass displays data. It's very different from a mobile screen where you can, cram in as much text as possible and really put in a lot of information. Whereas for glass, as I mentioned before, we call the screens, each screen kind of a card. And those cards typically have much less information because when the glassware, it becomes a bit difficult to read a lot of information on a glass screen. So you just have to consider the user interface of glass when compared to a mobile device when you're showing something like a ticketing system, right? So it may be multiple cards that would display the information versus just one web page, right? If you're using a phone or a laptop.
The next question is, can we get the slides from the training? Yes, James will provide the slides and we will send them to all the people who were in the webinar.
Yep.
And then someone is asking, is this the new model? So I don't know.
Yeah, well, relatively new. We launched the device last year in 2020, and that was in North America. And we started distributing in Europe earlier this year. So yeah, fairly new.
Okay, until now, that was the last question. Are there any more questions? Let's wait a few moments.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, someone is asking me to repeat the link for the registration. The website is glass.techdatavendors.be. We will sure mention the link also in the thank you mail after the webinar. If you go to the website, you will see that we created a little video with some partners who are already working with glass right now. This is interesting also for you to watch. There you can see also some used cases. Then someone is asking, what is the delivery time for the device?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, if you place, let's assume you're already signed up as a reseller, we're seeing about a 1 week turnaround as far as delivery.
I think you have a warehouse in Europe.
Yeah, in fact, it's the distribution center is in the Netherlands.
Yeah, shouldn't be too long. So I would say like 1 week maybe.
Yeah.
I already have one person who wants to buy too, so that's good news.
All right, the webinar has been already paid off. Fantastic.
Yes. Okay, are there any more questions? Do you have models for female? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's all one. We find that it's very adjustable, and so there hasn't really been a difference between genders.
Okay, I think this was the last question. Anyone
Great.
else who still has a question? What was the name of the partner with the strap?
Sorry, right, with I think the clip is what you're referring to.
Okay.
We're still working on that, so stay tuned. We haven't announced it yet.
Oh, yes, he means the clip to connect it to existing glasses. So that's still coming.
Right.
Then one question, Wi-Fi for the moment and not 5G?
Yeah, that's right. As I mentioned, the device does not have a SIM card in it. What we found is that cellular connectivity is a huge power draw, and the battery on glass is fairly small. If we had, if a wearer, I guess theoretically used an external battery pack, it shouldn't be an issue, but we wanted to be able to have the device be usable, for a reasonable amount of time. And so with current technology, just having that SIM card on there just eats up too much battery life. So no 5G yet.
What is the battery life? Can you tell us how much it lasts?
It very much depends. And what I mean by that is if you're using, let me give you the worst case scenario, right? If you're using the device for a full two-way video stream, which means the camera on the glass is on and streaming what I'm looking at, and then the display is receiving a video stream from someone else, like if they're in front of their laptop and their camera is on, I can see their face or their screen. So that is by far the most consumptive use of glass. And we've seen users get about 90 minutes, 100 minutes out of the device if they're continually video streaming. If you cut that down to just sending a video stream and your display is off, you could probably double the life of the device yet again, so maybe 3 or 4 hours. And in the case of some customers that are only using the device for work instructions, meaning text or photos displayed on the device, but not video streaming, we've seen workers get anywhere from 6 to 8 hours out of the device. And then also recall that you can also, of course, connect an external battery pack, and it also has the USB-C connector, fast charging connector. So you can go from 0 to 50% charge in about 20 minutes.
Then I have a new question. Can you use the hotspot and Bluetooth of your smartphone? Is it possible to use in the car while driving when your car Bluetooth is connected?
Yeah. Yes, you can use your hotspot and your Bluetooth while driving. May not be the best use case for glass. Some people have thought about using it for navigation and all that. But again, oftentimes it may not be the best use case in our experience.
Okay, for that, this was the last question, I think.
Great.
Anyone else would still ask something? Okay, right on time. Then I think we can close the webinar if there are no more questions. I don't see anything coming in.
Thank you for all the great questions.
Yeah, it was a great session. Thank you very much, James, for your very good explanation. I hope that we have created a few enthusiasts that will launch Google Glass in Belgium.
Yes, and thank you so much for setting this up.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.